My name is Michael Behrisch. I'm from the German Aerospace Center, so short DLR. We are not only doing aerospace, we are also doing traffic. So yeah, if you're expecting astronauts, you are in the wrong session. We are doing street traffic as well, and this one is where I'm talking about is SUMO, Simulation of Urban Mobility, is our Eclipse project, which we are developing for more than 20 years now, actually. Of course, we are not that long an Eclipse project. Came to Eclipse, I think, 5 years ago, and there we are part of the Open Mobility working group. Yeah, okay, more people finding their way. Good to have you here. Just also for you, you are actually encouraged to unpack your laptop if you want to follow some of the hands-on parts here. So there will be some part where you can play a little with SUMO, provided the wireless is strong enough here. Okay, yeah, so we are part of the, or taking part in the Open Mobility Working Group. We are also in the so-called automotive top-level project, so just that you can sort us out whenever you look at the Eclipse webpage, that's where you find SUMO. Okay. Just maybe I can ask first, so who of the audience has already heard of us, or has heard of SUMO? Okay, so that's still a minority, so I do not bore too many if I at least do a short repetition. So to start with, it is about microscopic transport system simulation, so short traffic simulation where you model every individual agent. So every person, every car has the individual representation in this model. Everything is moving more or less independently. Of course, they need to react to the others, but you can, let's say, determine the position of every participant at every point in time, so to say. I'm putting a little stress on this because this is important for the models, also for the walking models we will see later on, because not everyone is doing it that way. Sometimes people think, all traffic is something like a fluid in a pipe, and that's more or less it, and we can model it this way. And also people try to do this much more microscopic. We call this then submicroscopic and nanoscopic or something like that, where they say, no, we do not only need to know where the vehicle is, we also need to know where every part of the engine is currently moving, and which gear is being taken, and what's the diameter of the wheel and everything like that. That's not what SUMO does. So our scale is, yes, we want to know where the agent is, but we do not want to know the parts. And what we want to do with this is really simulate whole cities. So even large cities I'm writing here, so if you consider Berlin a large city, we are in Germany, as we usually do, but of course sometimes people have different expectations. So when I mean the limitation, I mean there's no hardwired limitation in the software. It's just, what I can still do on this machine is probably Berlin. If you have a larger machine, then you have a larger limit. So what SUMO does is really simulating all the movements in the traffic network. And if you want to do this, you need a lot of help, because you need a lot of data for the network. You need to know where the streets are. You need to know where the people come from, where they go to. And you do not only want to simulate, you need to set up the whole environment. And that's why SUMO is not only the simulation tool, not only the beautiful graphical user interface you see here, it is also a whole collection of tools which allow you to determine where the people are coming from, not determine in the sense of use various data input formats to convert them into routes in SUMO. It has an API, it has a remote control interface, so you can use it as a library or really as a service in different programming languages, and yeah, there is a community around it, as you would probably expect with being a successful open source project for some time. So yeah, that's what SUMO is all about. And yeah, now the first advertisement, so to say. So you can actually install it, and it should be not so much of a pain. So if your machine is up and running, then you could try one of the steps mentioned here, or just visit our download page and download it directly. And I will talk now in this talk a little bit about theory first, so that you have times to set up. And then when I'm done with the theory, so to say, then the active part comes where I show something and you might be able to follow. And yeah, and then after that, I will talk about something about, you know, the internals, so to say. So how did we build this, and how do we test this regularly? And yeah, so that will be the larger scheme here. So try to memorize, or at least get the idea of how to install this on your system. Follow the QR code, or simply go to sumo.dlrde/download. It works with the Eclipse URL as well. The DLR one is just shorter. And try it out. Okay. So the question now is if we can do vehicles this way. So if you have the whole traffic system in a box, so to say, in our simulation, why do you think walking is still interesting? I mean, at first, when SUMO started, there was no person at all. It was only cars. But we really soon discovered that walking, you know, is maybe the essential part of movement. So it's the first time you really are the self-mover. So we are in automotive, so it is an automotive person, so which we need to model. And the idea was not only that, you know, breathing is also essential, but we do not model it here. So that's not the only reason, but we need to do several specialized traffics also in SUMO. So it's not only the regular part where you could say, yeah, most of the time it's not really interesting what the pedestrians do, but we have a lot of special events, or maybe also catastrophes, where it is much more important what the pedestrians do than what the cars do, for instance. Because in such an event where you have a large crowd, for instance, the movement of the crowd can sometimes block every other movement of traffic. And there are two more topics here which I just want to touch briefly. In a sense, walking is much easier than driving. What do I mean by that? It's, you can, of course, everyone can walk, almost everyone. And so everyone has an intuitive understanding on how this process works. But that's not what I mean here. The point here is that if you want to simulate it, you sometimes have only very few limiting factors on the model, what it can do. You know, pedestrians are not that fast. You do not have that many collisions. You can almost brake instantaneously, for instance. You can almost accelerate instantaneously from 0 to your maximum speed. So the model can actually be quite simple for movement of only a few pedestrians on a street. Of course, if you then go to the events and the large crowds, it gets much more complicated. And that's the last part here. If it gets complicated, then it gets real complicated, because what makes it easier is the pedestrians are smaller, so to say, and this is also part of the difficulty because they tend to find ways which are completely unexpected. So the car is usually quite big and has a very limited possibility to move in the plane. You know, usually it only goes forward and turns in very limited angles. Pedestrians do really, really strange things. Okay, so it is an interesting topic, and it is part of almost every travel. That was enough for us to look into it. Not only us, people are looking into it for, almost 50 years now. And the first general models which came up are from Mr. Gibbs, who also did the first car following models actually, even earlier. I think it was in the beginning of the 80s. And in the middle of the 80s, he also proposed a model for really moving pedestrians in the plane. So he really did this for visualization purposes. So he wanted to really put pixels on more or less the screen where he thinks the pedestrians are, and it is a cell model. So, in contrast to what we usually do with SUMO, where we have really a space continuous model, so the person or the vehicle can be at an arbitrary position in the plane. He subdivided the whole area into a grid and said, yeah, in every cell there can be one person or no person, and that was already the basic model. And then he just said, depending on the cells around us, where can we move, or where we can't move, or where will we move probably, because we try to evade others or something like that. So the social force model by Helbing is somehow an extension to this. This is already a space continuous, but has still the idea of I want to evade other peoples and this evasion, or I want to go into a group with other peoples. These evasion and grouping procedures are modeled by forces, really. You can think of them as not really physical forces, so you do not walk until you really bump into the other person, but the idea of being attracted or repulsed by something else is what directs the movement of the particles here, which are persons. And you can see already in this model interesting things like the lane formation, for instance, so that you have streams of persons. So you have the white persons going from left to right, the black ones going from right to left, and they form really lanes, just like cars do, and try to have, let's say, stable substreams, so to say, in this large area. So the social force model is a very influential one, which also influenced our own model in SUMO a lot, to see how from a very, very few assumptions of how people move, you get those complex effects. There are also other models, I already mentioned this, which try to handle persons as particles in a gas, so to say, and really try to abstract from the individual movements. And this development got even further. I already spoke about larger crowds and evacuation possibilities. And the whole area which has been touched went into the robotics realm, where you really do not think at first about having a larger crowd, but where the ultimate topic is really motion planning. So you know where you're starting, you know where you're going to, and you want to find more or less your shortest way through the area. Or maybe the fastest, or maybe the most secure one. And all these problems went into the models we studied before we implement something in SUMO. And finally, when we had the first model, another topic came up, which are the shared spaces. So if you look at the first models, you can see that most of the obstacles you see here, either there are none or it's only the walls. But when it gets really difficult, you have moving obstacles. So you have other participants in traffic, or you have you have other vehicles. You have traffic lights, which are sometimes red and sometimes green, or you have shared spaces of various kinds. Okay. So how did it start in SUMO? At first, we had only public transport, so no pedestrians at all. We had cars and we had buses and trains and things like that. And the idea was first, we need someone to ride on those buses and trains. So otherwise, there's no point in having a bus when no one is riding it. And but if we want to model a pedestrian just for the sake of having him or her enter the bus at some time, there's really no point in interacting with each other much. So you do not need to have a car waiting for him or have them crowded or something like that. So really the first model we had in SUMO was the so-called non-interacting model, which just meant I want to go from A to B. I calculate which streets I need to walk and how long they are, and then I put a timestamp on that, and after that time I will appear at the end of the edge and at the end of the next edge and eventually at my destination. Okay, so not a very elaborate model. Then the next model we had built a little bit on this idea, not really on the idea, but rather on the effect of what showed up in the Helbing cases. So you saw this lane formation, which is also something we of course see in regular traffic all the time. So we have, in SUMO lane traffic because we have vehicles, and we thought, well, let's put those stripes simply on the sidewalks. So you could also have lanes on sidewalks, more or less. Of course, you want the pedestrians maybe to occupy a little bit more space, more than one lane, or you want to make it easier for them to change lanes. But it was still the idea that we could get away without modeling spaces as areas. We could simply try to move the pedestrians along the lane and only look at those junctions when we need to cross them. And then we have interaction with vehicles, but otherwise, we probably don't need it. And then we noticed, well, if you just move along lanes, then it may happen that you have someone coming against you, that there's opposite traffic on the same lane, which we usually do not model in car traffic. It happens rarely, hopefully. But of course, on sidewalks you have that. So you have people coming your way. And we still thought, well, that's not so important. We can just, do some evasive maneuvers. Somehow the pedestrian will make his or her way through. But actually, that's already a harder problem. So we had oncoming traffic, and really in our striping model, so that's the way we called it, we needed to jump to various loops, so to say, just to make it possible that persons do not get stuck in the end and just stand there and do not move anymore. So that's when we actually thought, well, we are at the end with what we can do with lanes. We cannot go further in our analogy, what we do with cars, because in the end, person will need to move somehow freely in the plane. And then we got in contact with our colleagues at Jülich. So the Forschungszentrum Jülich developed for some time already a pedestrian simulator, which they really did first for modeling evacuations, but which is also capable of doing regular traffic movements, of course. And so that's where they started. So really you have floor plans and persons which want to move from the lower part of the area, into the upper part where the emergency exits or the regular exits are. And that's where we thought, yeah, we can couple this to SUMO. I mean, this is another model which is available, but yeah, how will this be possible? So does our street really look like this? So this took us some time. I will come back to that later, but in the end, yes, you can do something like model a street, a sidewalk, as some area with walls on both sides and try to let the pedestrians walk through them just like they walk through a room, sometimes. Okay. So that was the theory part. I hope everyone who wants to has his or her machine set up. So we will try to get our hands on it. So what you need to follow this, the more practical part here, is SUMO, at least version 1.2. So the present version is 1.14. So 1.2 is about 3 years old. So you will be very unlucky if you have this on your machine. You need Python, not necessarily to run the simulation, but a lot of the tooling around, and the tool I will use in the next step is written in Python. And you need a text editor. So not everything you will be doing here can be done with the SUMO graphical user interface already. So you will need to edit some XML files. So the tool we will be using is called the OSM Web Wizard. It's a small wrapper script, more or less, which started as a student project, and which allows you to get a very first scenario with only a few clicks. Okay, so we will try to do this. So yeah, I hope you have installed SUMO. If you have so, if you did this on your machine with the installer, you will also find the web wizard in your start menu. But for all the others, I will show probably how they find it. So there will be a SUMO tools directory where you have the web wizard. And then it opens up with your web browser of your choice. So what's your default web browser? Here, mine is Firefox. And gives you an OpenStreetMap and some means to select your location. You could also push the Use Your Current Location button here, but my Firefox blocks it, I just noticed. I hope yours does not. But if you enter Ludwigsburg here, then it also finds it quite fast. So we are here somewhere. And yeah, now we want to simulate this, including pedestrians. Yeah, to have more fun, we will also include public transport. So I add this checkbox here. And yeah, we add some pedestrians. So this is really only the way to get a very rough scenario first. Maybe I improve a little bit the count, not by fractions. So you can give for some traffic modes the number of cars or pedestrians in this case, which will appear per kilometer, so per street kilometer in this network, and per hour. Of course, if you do this with the SUMO tools, which I will come to later, you can do more fine-grained stuff, but here it will just put random traffic on your map. So it will really throw a dice and find an origin and a destination for all these pedestrians and cars. And do we need more? I don't think so. So we can push the generate scenario button. It will now download the map from OpenStreetMap, so just the area which is now visible. And then it will process the data using the tooling SUMO has to convert the network into the SUMO format, because OpenStreetMap does not have everything available which is needed for a traffic simulation. So the data needs to be enriched somehow. For instance, guessing traffic lights, so traffic light plans, when does the traffic light switch, or lane-to-lane connections, which are, or what is the priority on junctions, so where are the major streets, where are the minor streets, all the things like that. And then it puts the traffic on top, so it generates route files. Where do the cars actually move? Where do the pedestrians actually move? And then it's open SUMO in the background. Nice feature. Okay. And then it fires up really the locally installed simulation you have, hopefully. So it vaguely looks like what we've seen before. So we are here. And then you press play and have fun. So you see cars moving, and you don't see the pedestrians just because they are too small. So I will make them a little bit larger. So that you already see them. Okay, that's already it. You already have your first SUMO model with pedestrians on top. And you can see here, if you go for the junctions, for instance, that they are also stopping at the traffic lights here. So they wait until they get green. So we are not in the non-interacting case. We already have the striping model activated here. And actually they are making their way quite fine through the city. Not too many obstacles. And you see here also public transport is imported. There are bus stops. And actually quite a lot of buses. Okay, I don't know whether Ludwigsburg is this well equipped with buses. The data we import here is not real data concerning the schedules, because OpenStreetMap does not have this data. So it has sometimes data like the bus is running every 10 minutes on weekdays, but it has not the real schedules. But SUMO can import GTFS data, for instance, as well. Oh, I need to speed up a little. And so just what I wanted to show shortly is that there are also tools to edit the network, not only, but also the demand for the for the pedestrian movements here. So this is our tool NetEdit, and you can simply add here, go into a demand mode and create person movements, so to say. I just want to move from here, let's say just across this junction, and yeah, then I just have created a single person, but I also can create a person flow. So if I want to have people moving around here as well, then I can say just for 1 hour, let's move 1,800 persons along the street. Okay. Then I save this demand. And yeah, maybe I just show shortly how this can look like. So what you then still need to do is to add the information here in your, so that's what the SUMO configuration file looks like. So you just have the original parts which were already generated by the web wizard, the routes for the public transport, the routes for the passenger cars, the pedestrians. I add now one more route file for the additional pedestrians I created. And then I just can show you, hopefully, that there are no more pedestrians. Yeah, that I have now here, this flow generated, where there are many more pedestrians. Okay. Ooh. Okay, so you can do things like that. You can also add, yeah, I'm running out of time, so I cannot show you anymore how you activate the different models, but that's also something you do in the configuration file I just showed you. You can there influence which models actually run. Yeah. And it is also possible to do this whole thing programmatically. So I already told you in the beginning, there is an API. So I just wrote here, this is a complete script which does nothing else but starting SUMO with this Tracy library, which comes with SUMO, and then makes a few steps, in this case 10 steps. And after the 5th step, so yeah, if I equals 5, it just aborts the plan for one of the persons. So for a person with the ID 0, it just removes all the stages. So all the different walks this person might want to take, everything gets aborted, everything gets removed. This person will definitely leave now the scenario. So that's just one example. And you can still also question a single edge in the network which persons are on there. So this is what happens here in this line where I get last step person IDs and print this whatever you want to do in Python. So you can not only edit this as XML or visually in the net editor, you can also influence an already running simulation with different languages. And yeah, how does this work, so to say? So the different models we have are really all quite tightly coupled to what we are doing in SUMO. So everything is inside the model with a library. So the different models are really C libraries or C++ libraries really linked to SUMO. So SUMO itself is implemented in C++. So we really have somehow tightly coupled system which we already need, which we need because we have, you know, a quite high performance needs here. So we need to update very often where the position of many different objects in our simulation. And there are also differences, difficulties concerning timing and collision handling, which need a lot of effort. So we unfortunately need this tight coupling, but fortunately, since everything is open source and hopefully quite well documented, you can easily implement your own model. And as you see here, we already have, for instance, for the car following models, a list of, I don't know, 12 models maybe. For the pedestrians, it's still a little bit less. But you can try, of course, to do this inferencing also remotely via the Tracy API I showed you before, but then you need to be very careful with performance. And you can use SUMO itself also as a library in your own application, either with the Python interface or also with as a C++ library. Okay, I will rather skip this one. We do testing. Okay, that's the baseline here. And for all platforms with text test, I don't know, currently about 15,000 tests every night. But what I still wanted to say is testing is good, users are better in the meaning of we really get a lot of good feedback, and also feedback which is very valuable to us. For instance, last week I just got to know that I don't know who of you has ever been to Madagascar, but there are actually places on this planet where you drive on the right, but have to yield to the left. I would never have guessed that, and probably a lot of you would not do so either. So we need this feedback. No one will sit down and read all the traffic rules for all the countries in the world. And we actually have now here the possibility, because everything here is open source, that people can sit down and implement even the rules for themselves here and find their own traffic simulation here. Okay, what do people use this for? Of course, we want to have a different traffic system which does not, or which changes a lot in different aspects. So making it known to other people that there are different ways of moving through a city than just using the old car is also an important application here. Okay, thank you very much. I hope there's still time for at least 2 or 3 questions. If not, you can contact me, us every time. I also have some cards here if you want to pick up one. Thank you for your attention. Any immediate questions? Yeah.
So what's the interface is built with which kind of toolkit?
What do you mean which kind of toolkits? So it is
the graphical toolkits on the interface. Which one is using?
What you saw is the Fox toolkit, which is rarely used. And at the time, it was one of the only ones which fits our license model. So we thought about Qt, but yeah, it has a license problem. More questions? Okay, then thank you.